Hello my dears. A while back ago we made a video called What's Wrong with Fire? The Other Side of the Story, and in this video, part 2, we're going to address, is living off of your investments ideal? That's the focus in this video.
Wouldn't it be great if you could have a crystal ball and figure out, having an insight into decisions that you're trying to make, things you're trying to figure out, or things you're trying to do better or smarter? I think most people would say yes to that. And so, what most people really, when you look at what they would do if they had a little genie and that would grant you 3 wishes, most people, generally, they would want the same or similar things. For example, if you talk to people and say, if you won the lottery, what's the first thing you would do? A lot of people would go for having a life of leisure. Sounds really good, especially if they're really bogged down with their schedules and that kind of thing. You see this in the retire abroad, live abroad sphere, where people are attracted to going abroad for the idea of having household help, to be able to hire people cheaply, to be able to be someone that can afford to hire household help. Of course, this has never been an attraction for us because our schedules have never been so chaotic and limiting that, taking a few minutes to clean your own house, or, enjoying cooking your own meals and the benefit of cooking, we love going out to eat, don't get me wrong. The other thing is people fancy, having mansions. A lot of people would think, well, I'd love to have a great big house. And then, of course, you have to have the servants to help you take care of it, right? And so you have the, people that want a life of leisure. You've got people that want to have big, huge mansions. And then you have people that want to indulge. These tend to be on the indulgences side, but not all of it, but a lot of it's in the indulgence side. The other would be to indulge in good food, and note this is how people are also enticed into going abroad by being told that you can go out to eat for a song, for pennies. And of course, the best food is fresh food, home cooked food, and even homegrown food as far as your health's concerned. Okay, so and then you've got those that would devote themselves to, the nice way of saying it would be, to a life of partying, drinking and all the time and partying and in that way. What's really interesting about this analogy is that there's actually an ancient story that gives us that crystal ball insight into these kinds of things that most people are wishing for. This day and age, we like to talk about winning the lottery, but back in those days, the kings had all the money. They were the ones that were the equivalent to today's people that win the lottery, or today's Bill Gates, the Jeff Bezos, the Warren Buffetts. Back in the day, it was the kings. The kings had that kind of wealth. And while you may not get an opportunity to sit down and talk one-on-one with these people this day and age and pick their brains and talk about what you want to talk about, not what they want to talk about, we can look into the history and ancient stories. So here it goes. So there was this ancient king, and he said to himself, I have all this wealth, I have everything available to me at my fingertips, so I'm going to see if I can gain wisdom. Sort of like a Thoreau kind of going out into the woods, but this is the complete opposite. This is a king that has everything at his disposal, without any financial limits. So he's going to try different lifestyles to see if he can gain wisdom and see what's really the essence of life. And he says to himself, all right, let's just devote ourselves to complete leisure every day. We're just not going to do anything but party and leisure and have a good time. And so he did that for a while, and he found that it just didn't seem to provide the satisfaction and fulfillment he was looking for. He moved on. He back in the day, owning large farms was a guarantee of getting all kinds of varieties of food. Back in the day, they didn't have, corporate stores that the distribution and delivery and the corporate farm, they didn't have all that. In order to ensure themselves a wide variety of high quality food, that, owning farms was the thing to do, and to have people, raising the food for you so that you just simply had access to all this wonderful food. So he did that too.
He said to himself, "Oh, I've got the money. I'm gonna have mansions." You see this, that people will win the lottery, and what's the first thing they do? They go out and buy a huge house, a mansion. You see this. And so he decided he was going to have mansions and, and wives and servants. And so he did all that, and he found that even that at some point just didn't bring the satisfaction.
He came to the conclusion that the best thing a person could actually do to find contentment and wisdom in life is to
enjoying your work and the fruits of your labor.
Enjoy his work and the fruits of his labor. All right, so I feel like that little story gives us an insight on retiring earlier, retiring better, fire earlier, fire better, or just plain fire, because
I like it that people invest. I like it that people are frugal, they save, and they have goals, and they want to be financially independent, and there's nothing wrong with any of that. But I'm saying that I think that there's this ideal here in the center, and there's these issues around the ideal. And so we see that in the story that we just talked about, and it's an insight. For example, Warren Buffett, right? When was he fired? When did Warren Buffett fire? I mean, Warren Buffett, right, will never be able to spend the money he's got, and yet he still buys companies. Nothing better for a man than to enjoy his work and the fruits of his labor. There are other examples also on a smaller scale of people within our lifetimes. Back in the 80s, I kept seeing in the newspaper stories of people that had chucked it all. They sold everything. They had professional practices. They had real estate, cars, this, that, assets, and they sold everything. And their ideal was to go sail around the world. There was a lot of stories like this. And then there are other people that went and traveled around the world. But eventually, these people did come back to some kind of work. And I know that we discussed that in the other video. But I wanted to talk a little bit more about ideals and how people focus on something they don't yet have as being worth delaying gratification. Because you don't hear all the stories. What you hear is all the success stories of people. Hey, we fired, a while ago, now we're traveling the world. But there's also things that happen to people that sometimes get in the way of our plans. We also had somebody contact us that said, I was on my fire program, he lost a couple of $100,000 he was getting close to firing, and then he had a setback. So the point of this conversation is that if he had already delayed his gratification, right? Let's say he started here and he's been delaying his gratification, meaning that the ideal that he's been working towards was the fire. And then he's been doing it for this length of time, whatever that length of time is. I don't know, maybe it was 10 years, maybe it was 15 or 20, I don't know. But then he gets a setback, and he gets set back all the way back to here. So now what? Now he's got to spend that many more years again just to catch up and be back where he's going to be fired? We're mortals. We only have so much time on this earth. So, I hate seeing that happen to someone. And there are other reasons, like, you got health, you got finances, you got unforeseen situations. You got all these reasons and all these things that can happen. In other words, life is a risk, and there is no guarantees. And to have such a far away a goal, goals are fine, but remember, life's going to take its own turns. And so while nobody likes to admit that they're on a delayed gratification plan, if they truly were not on a delayed gratification plan, then there would be no need to fire. You follow me? Right? Because if your life's so great, why do you need to fire? Just stay doing what you're doing then.
I don't
right?
get it. Yeah.
No, really,
exactly.
We're on a work-a-day commitment, and we want off of that, right? And that's why we work to build up to a fire. So the question for you today is this. If you were on your delayed gratification fire program and you were just a few short years away and something unforeseen happened that set you back 2/3 from where you started, would that be cause for a great disappointment? Probably it would. And so we're saying that if you ask yourself that question and you say, I wouldn't want to go through that. I wouldn't want to be 2/3 or 80%, 90% to my fire program, and then the stock market drops 50% and it doesn't go into new high territory for another 15 years. How would you feel about that? Or like the guy that lost a few $100,000 on a real estate deal, and it sets him back. How would you feel about that? Or what if one of your lung collapses, or you have some rare cancer come up? Because this happens to people, and it's not being negative. It's just life, And even if everything worked out perfect, like a lot of these people, what we're saying is that even in that case, people, once they're off that commitment treadmill, they start getting more creative. They have the energy and the creativity, and they're more open to opportunities. And so they clearly go back to they take advantage of opportunities, and they end up getting involved in some kind of activity or work activity. And so the real essence of this conversation is to look at the complete picture and say, wow, what makes sense for me? Is this a risk I want to take with my life? And when we watch and listen to other people talk about how everything is great, let's put that into perspective. What we talk about is achieving the results that the adherents of the fire program achieve, but doing it, in the here and now, in the moment right now. The micro enterprise can be any business that you can shape the size of. In other words, it's fractal. You can chop it up like Legos into little pieces. You can get it to this level, the level you want. My micro enterprise, listen to this, it was very ideal because I could do my micro enterprise for 3 hours a day, about 3, some days 4, some days only 1 or 2, but average about 3 hours a day. And and then it was also seasonal. So not only that, during the season, like say from middle of March through December, I would work 3 or 4 hours a day, and then I would have the second half of December, and then January, February, and half of March with no work. I would save up for the 3.5 months for my expenses. So I would lay out all my expenses for the year, and during the part of the year that I was working, I would save up for the part that I wasn't, and that way I had basically every year 3.5 months off. I could go camping, I could go sailing, I could go, of course I was doing that anytime I wanted because I was only working 3 or 4 hours. So you see, this is when I say I lived a life where I never needed a vacation, or live a life where you don't need to have a vacation from. That's what I'm talking about. The micro enterprise would make enough for you to still pay your bills, be able to have hobbies and enjoy life, do things you enjoy, and still save money. Still save money. If you want to invest that money, you can invest that money. So you see, I'm really talking about still staying on a program, but cutting out the delayed gratification part of it. That's what we're talking about, that nobody else talks about because they don't want to admit that they're on a delayed gratification program. Okay?
And so what it really comes back to, I think the story of the ancient king really just gives us an amazing insight that the true contentment and value in life is to enjoy your work and the fruits of your labor.
Thanks for listening to the video. We do have a Facebook group that you can join if you want to know more. Please like the video and push the...
Thanks for coming to our channel, and we do have links below. Check those out too. Have a nice day.